It's great to be sitting across from you again, Colin. How you been?
You know, Sonny, I've been pretty good. You know, it's been, what, 2 years since we've done this?
2 years. I think it was December 30th last time, so almost 2 years to the day.
2 years on the day. You know, I just want to ask you, it's been a little bit. We're both in college. What's been going on with you? Come on, give me a rundown. What do you got?
You know, out there in Miami, trying to do a lot of work with the school program there. So it's called UMTV, and do a lot of work with the sports station, not only in class but outside of class. Just trying to get my feet wet, trying to get more experience both on camera and behind the scenes, doing some editing work, as I'm sure you're doing the same.
Yeah, it's been good. I've been out at University of Wisconsin. No complaints. It's been pretty good out there. I've been busy working at ESPN Madison out there, which is a flagship station. But it keeps me busy, and I'm happy to be back here talking with you, talking New York sports.
Of course, yeah. Have you done any actual radio shows since the last one we did?
I have, yeah. I've done a couple within ESPN Madison. I do a game day program for Wisconsin college football, 2 hours pre, 2 hours post. I do that with two guys who I know, Brad Nortman and Alex Strofe, two guys who work out there. But it's a blast, and it keeps me busy. And who doesn't like doing college sports? I don't know.
So obviously we have the huge game tonight, Jets-Jaguars. For those that didn't tune in 2 years ago, can you explain why you are a Jaguars fan?
I get asked this a lot, and the first thing I'll say is when I was a young NFL fan, I didn't necessarily have a home to call my team. I wasn't a New York fan. I wasn't a Giants. I wasn't a Jets. I wasn't raised that way. But I needed a team, and it was about 2013 around there where I was thinking, I don't like rooting for the teams around me. I wanted my own thing. I kind of like going against the crowd and having my own team. Here comes Blake Bortles out of UCF. Allen Robinson was a second-round pick that year out of Penn State. Two young guys coming in, two guys who I enjoyed watching in college. It's a young team. Nobody roots for them, which is a big thing for me for some reason. And I chose them that year, and then I stuck with it. So other than that, they've had ups and downs, more downs than ups, and they're going to have a good opportunity tonight against the Jets.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it almost seems that the architect here at the Fan was in touch with Roger Goodell, because I don't know what the possible odds are that I'd be a Jets fan and you'd be a Jaguars fan, and we'd get to do a show on the same day as a Thursday night football game where they play each other.
And both teams have playoff implications as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Jags are 3. They win 3 and they're in. So they're in play for the division. Jets are not. They're more in play for the wild card. And with that tight division, I mean, the Jets need this game as much as anybody.
Yeah, what's going to be interesting is, as we both know, both teams are facing a situation where the team that they're battling with is the last team that they'll see on the schedule in Week 18. For the Jets, as you said, battling for that wild card spot with the Dolphins. And for the Jaguars, it's going to be the Titans in Week 18. So these two teams are definitely going to have games that come down to the final game of the season. And the last stretch is going to define what these teams do going into the offseason and potentially the playoffs.
Well, one thing that the Jets need, they need the Dolphins to lose, too. So if you're the Jets, you don't necessarily control your own destiny here. It's different with the Jags. The Jags actually control their own destiny. They already have a head-to-head win over the Titans. They won last week. And now that they're only a game back, and the Titans also had the Dallas Cowboys on the schedule too, and the Dallas probably going to need the game. So you're going to have a position where the Jags win 3. They're going to take down the Titans again, possibly, if they win tonight. Then they're going to be in the playoffs too, a team that had the number 1 pick last year as well. Last 2 years. We were talking about this last time. Remember, it was the Trevor Lawrence show, where we were trying to get Trevor Lawrence, and the Jets beat the Rams after a terrific win. Frank Gore scoring that touchdown there in the fourth quarter, keeping them ahead. And taking Zach Wilson second overall instead of Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's right, because back then we had all those conversations. Are the Jets putting Zach Wilson, or will they put him in a position to succeed? We were talking about Sam Darnold at the time, obviously. And we had the conversation about Daniel Jones and the same thing. So it's crazy to see how in just 2 years, Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence are still at the forefront of the conversation. And obviously, you're going to be the biggest story going into tonight's game.
Well, you're thinking about it a year and a half after both those guys were drafted. You're a Jets fan. We haven't spoken about this too much. And obviously, people on WFAN haven't heard. What are your thoughts on him? What do you think they should do? You think they're going to try to build his confidence back up? He's in year 1.5. So for people to kind of throw him to the side of the road and let him rot because of a couple things he said to the media, I think that's a little much. But ultimately, I want to ask you, what do you think about Wilson? What do you think they should do there?
The thing with Zach Wilson to me is it's almost an unfair position to him, because when you bring him in, the Jets are a horrible franchise, right? Bad track record with developing quarterbacks, call it what it is. You bring in a guy like Zach Wilson, and he's under the impression that he's going to have time. There's going to be patience. But when you go out and Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas put together the draft class that they did this season, and you have guys like Breece Hall who got hurt, Garrett Wilson, who's most likely going to be the offensive rookie of the year, guys like Sauce Gardner, who's most likely going to be the defensive rookie of the year, these guys that excelled at a rate that no one could have imagined that they were going to, it puts Zach Wilson in a much tougher spot because you no longer have the advantage of, all right, this is a bad team that's going to get time to develop. And even if Zach isn't good right away, he'll have that time and you'll see him in different looks. But now it's like, all right, the rest of this roster is ready to win. What is Zach doing that he's not letting us win games?
So you're saying because those other rookies have had such exponential growth in terms of the NFL, that's why Zach Wilson has a little bit more pressure on him?
Of course, and not even just the rookies, but the whole offseason, bringing in guys like DJ Reed to solidify the defense, the play of Quinnen Williams on the defensive front. I mean, the whole team in general has just exceeded all the expectations I had coming into the season, and that leaves Zach Wilson 100% with more pressure because he has to win games.
Yeah, but one thing about this is, the thing I'll say to that is, you're talking about a guy like a cornerback or a wide receiver. You know, those guys are a little bit more solo, isolated players comparatively to the quarterback. The quarterback needs the running game to work out. The quarterback needs the coaching to be solid. The quarterback needs the offensive line to protect him. The quarterback needs to be put in good situations by the defense. The wide receiver or the cornerback, they just have to guard who's in front of them or go catch the ball. So I'm not saying it, I'm not denouncing the position, but you're comparing it to a quarterback. And ultimately, when you're Zach Wilson, like, he hasn't had a ton of experience in these games, sure, and he's also in a New York market. This is a guy who went to BYU. You know, going into New York, you're going to get criticized if you walk the wrong way to the locker room. So it's a tough spot for him, but ultimately, he hasn't played well. And as a Jags fan, I'm very happy the Jaguars ended up with that first overall pick. But ultimately, I think it's a little early. Granted, the Jets now need to win these games, so obviously they're waiting for Mike White to come back. But ultimately, if you're kind of like ready to bottle Zach Wilson up and send him off, I don't think that's the right way to look at this. And, you know, if you're going to ask questions about him, you got to give him an offseason to figure that out. But right now, you got to win the game tonight.
I agree. And the thing with Zach Wilson that's so interesting is, I mean, he was 5-2 as a starter before he gets benched. And Mike, and the whole topic around him was, all right, he's not winning you the games. He's not losing you the games, but he's not the reason you won those games. He had some games where he had no touchdown passes, 100 yards passing, things like that, where he was carried by the run game, carried by the defense, as you said, putting them in positions to succeed. And then when Mike White comes in, he doesn't have the same success in terms of winning games, but it's clear that he was getting the guys the ball. It seemed like Garrett Wilson was so much happier, putting up stat lines that he's never put up with Zach Wilson. Guys like Elijah Moore finally getting involved again. So it's been the kind of the talk of the season, and it's the quote that's going around from all the time of Robert Saleh that Mike White makes the easy look easy. That's the biggest problem to me with Zach Wilson, and that's the biggest problem I've had this whole time, in that, as I mentioned, the Jets are so talented around Zach Wilson right now. That was never the case for Sam Darnold. He always had to be incredible, make these incredible plays outside of what was scripted for him in the offense. We're not asking Zach Wilson to do that. We're asking him to get guys balls in the position to succeed and to make the easy plays. And if he can hit the guy deep down the field, great. But that's not what we're asking him to do, and that's what he had struggled with. And I think my favorite thing that I've seen Doug Peterson do for Trevor Lawrence is just that. He designs the offense so that he doesn't have to be some transcendent player. He hits the short intermediate routes, he takes the plays when they're open, and he hits the occasional deep ball. And that's what I want to see from Zach Wilson tonight.
Well, Trevor Lawrence is different. Trevor Lawrence is a very transcendent kind of prototypical body of a quarterback. You know, he's a big arm, he's tall, he's athletic, a very underrated athlete. And he's a winner too. And you compare it to Zach Wilson, you're at a point where, sure, Zach Wilson's not doing the right things, but also he's not being protected either. Last game against the Lions, he was under pressure. Granted, he made some bad decisions. That last drive, he can't be taking sacks that first play of that drive.
Of course.
That was a horrific play. But also Zach Wilson had 3 very nice throws that drive as well, that final drive of the game. He put them in a position to at least get a field goal to tie it up. So against the Lions, who's also one of the hotter teams in the NFL. So sure, he went 18-35. You want to look at the box score. But when you see Zach Wilson, sure, he didn't play superb. But for a guy who his confidence was completely crumbled down internally as well as externally from the team and from the media and everything outside of that, I can't necessarily complain and say that he didn't show up, because ultimately he put him in a position to be competitive in the game.
I agree, and that's all you can ask for a young quarterback. As we've said, put your team in a position to win. Not only did he take the lead with 2 minutes left, but like you said, he brings them into field goal range. If that kick goes in, the conversation around Zach is completely different. And it all goes back to that post-game presser, because if you would have told me when Zach Wilson was drafted
that was terrible,
that he's going to be benched, not because of necessarily his play, but because of a response in the media, I would have said you're crazy. All I care about is the on-field production. But when you have as bad of an outing as he did and follow it up with his comments of, no, I did not let the defense down, That leads to bringing in the 5th-round pick, Mike White, and that changes everything. And the fact that Mike White got injured made this Jets season 10 times more interesting than it is because the ball got put back in Zach Wilson's hands. He got the reins back to the offense, and it's at a time now where he has a legitimate chance to finish out this season on a strong note and take back the ball from Mike White.
But do you not think that some of this goes to Saleh as well?
Some of what?
Some of this blame. Saleh, like, he's kind of threw his quarterback under the bus a little bit. He's also the one who's going to kind of supposed to mold this kid into being a leader in a New York market. Saleh is a guy who's a first-time head coach in this position, who in second year, like, Saleh has to be able to mold this kid to make sure he knows how to handle New York media and New York criticism. Is that not part of it? Is this just a Zach Wilson issue, or is this a Robert Saleh issue as well?
No, of course it's part of it, and I think it has to do with, once again, Zach's youth and the fact that he's coming from a market like BYU, being thrown into the New York market. It's this idea that he didn't have to be this guy right away. You see Trevor Lawrence struggling last year, led the league in interceptions. He's figuring it out now. All you had to do is settle in. We're not asking Zach to be this god, this next Tom Brady. Just settle into the role. So when you ask if it's Robert
Saleh, but a lot
Saleh's,
of that is pressure. You're getting pressured in the game. It's hard to kind of settle in and sort of develop your own. Sure, he should be throwing a little faster. He does try to make things happen when they're not there. But also, you got to be, everything else needs to work too, right?
To answer your question, I'd say it's less on Robert Saleh, and I think it'd be more on Michael Furr, the play caller. I think in terms of how to get the offense in the position he needs to succeed, there are some plays throughout the year where I think they have not done that. One thing I've harped on a lot is the fact that Berrios has been getting a lot of red zone looks that I think should be going to Elijah Moore. I think there's things like that that are out of Zach's control that he's being asked to do that might not be the best to help him succeed. And I do think it's part of Robert Saleh's job as the head of the team from the coaching staff to get Zach in position to succeed, to make Zach feel more comfortable. And looking back on that game when he benched him going into the Bears game, I thought that was a perfect time to say, Zach, here's your last chance. You're going up against a bad Bears team. You have to win this game. And if you don't play well this game, then you're getting benched. I think benching him for Mike White there almost created this rift where, as you said, it's put even more pressure on him now that he's come back because he feels like, and I talked to my brother about this, you don't ever want a quarterback to be thinking in his head, oh, if I make a mistake here, I'm going to be benched. You want him playing freely. You want him playing to his own skills. As soon as that doubt starts to creep in where he's not just playing for himself and his teammates, but now he's trying to worry about his roster spot, that's where it gets dangerous. And as you know, the NFL is, these things happen in split seconds, picking up a coverage or trying to evade a sack. If you let even that thought creep into your head of, oh, I might lose my job if I throw a pick here, you're going to play worse and you're not going to be able to be a successful quarterback in the league.
Now, you're talking about Zach Wilson there. I want to shift to the game tonight. Sure, Zach Wilson, he has a little bit of issues right now. You don't know what's going on with his psyche. You don't know what these conversations are with the coach. Game tonight, short week. A game that probably they should have been a little bit more, but you saw a couple positives in that Lion game, if you're the Jets fan. What do you need to see tonight in order to build off something here? I mean, obviously, no Mike White tonight. You're might be missing a couple key pieces like Quinnen Williams. You don't know what's going on with him. Going into the game night, offensively, Zach Wilson coaching. What do you need to see in order to kind of take a little bit more positives than negatives? Do you just straight win the game, or do you need to see more than that?
I need to see more than that. I need to see Zach come out from the very first snap of the game when the ball's in his hands. I need to see him start earlier. This team has started so slow throughout the year where it feels like we get ourselves into these holes where we may drive down the field, but the ball stalls around the 40-yard line and we give the ball up, punt for field position. I need to see Zach Wilson, as soon as he gets the ball, get into the offense. Even last game against the Lions, it feels like it took him until that last fourth quarter drive to truly settle in. He kept taking these first down sacks and making these heroic third down throws like he did to the one Michael Carter where he threw up and Michael Carter made an incredible play to somehow save an interception. I need Zach to be in the flow of the offense. It can't be these 3rd and 13s with these deep passes, these post routes. He has to get the plays that have been working all year. And I think that's going to start with getting him out of the pocket, getting him on these play action routes. And that all starts, as you know, with the run game. And a guy who I've been super big on, Zonovan Knight, who may or may not be playing tonight.
But you're talking about settling into the offense. The Jets played pretty well in that first half against the Lions. Like, they were going in, it was a tie game. They actually had the lead there, too. So against a team that's also as hot as the Lions, didn't you think that at least Zach Wilson did enough to kind of put his team in a position to win, right?
He did enough, but they didn't win the game.
Sure.
As much
and
as
I get that.
like,
and they missed a field goal. But like, we're at a point where he needs to settle in. He needs to do this. He needs to do that. There's a lot of this blame that goes directly to the quarterback, as it goes in the NFL. But a lot of this should go to the coaching, too. I mean, a lot of people have talked about the clock management with Saleh at the end there. Saving his timeouts for the last 20 seconds of the game. How worth it would that have been? Granted, Zach Wilson should have taken that sack that first play. You're in a position where you don't really know what you're looking for. Is he trying to settle into the offense? Is he trying to be that transcendent, big-time arm quarterback that everybody thought he was going to be out of college? Tonight, if I'm a Jet fan, you got to think that if Zach Wilson plays confident, that's what you're looking for. The New York media does him no favors. They do him no favors in terms of building up that confidence. And now you got a Thursday night game, going to be primetime. It's going to be raining against a team and another player in Trevor Lawrence that has kind of been like your 1A, 1B guy since you've been drafted. This is a position for him to kind of, let his shoulders hang and go out there and take them to a win. And I'm a Jags fan. And I'm saying that I have no allegiance to the Jets or Robert Saleh. I just think there's a lot more blame that needs to go around that's not just named Zach Wilson.
Yeah, and it's got to start with the offensive line in the run game tonight, because last game against the Lions, you had a season-low rushing yards, 50 rushing yards on the week, and no run longer than 6 yards, which is unacceptable. And you are playing with two of your tackles in Dwayne Brown and George Fant injured, but they are playing throughout these injuries, which is respect to them. But you have to establish the run game, because when that's how you've gone all season, we mentioned Breece Hall goes out earlier in the season, but that's how you help Zach out, by taking the pressure off his shoulders to not have to fight for every down. The Jets like to call out a first down run plays. I don't love it, but when you're getting the 6-7 yards and it creates the 2nd and 3s, that's the offense that Zach Wilson thrives in. So I think to take the pressure off of his shoulders, you have to establish the run in a game where, like I said, coming off the Lions, you failed miserably at that, and that goes further than just protecting the quarterback.
Well, the furthest thing you could do, right, is the defense also has to show up as well. Keeping this game within reach is a big thing. Like we say, a couple plays win these games. Zach Wilson makes maybe one more play. The defense makes one more play. He doesn't take that sack, and they are able to complete a ball there. If that changes that Lions game.
Also, it has to be mentioned, and I'm sorry to cut you off, it has to be mentioned that this Lions game reminded me so much of the Patriots game. The special teams has to be better. You cannot let up a punt return touchdown in what ends up being a one-possession game. You just can't. And when you see that happen, it's so frustrating, because Braden Mann, who has been solid in the past years, I think he might be the worst punter in the league. He never sets us up with field position. Anytime he gets a chance to pin them within the 10, it's a touchback. So tonight, if they let up a special teams touchdown tonight, I will be furious.
I'd be very, very shocked if you see anything of this special teams nature on the Jaguars' end scoring touchdowns. But maybe. You never know with these games. I think if you're a Jet fan, I think this is going to be a very close game. The Jags are not good on the road. They're 2-6. Trevor Lawrence had one game in a very rainy setting, and it was in Philadelphia, and he had 5 turnovers. So I'm not saying that's going to happen again. I think the kid's going to learn, but can't say I'm too stoked about that, it being a monsoon at MetLife tonight.
And the veterans on that Jets defense smell blood. Guys like C.J. Mosley just got a Pro Bowl vote. Those guys are going to be hunting Trevor Lawrence down to try to make him turn the ball over. And they're going to be, I promise you, a night like tonight where the conditions are bad, they're going to be daring Trevor Lawrence to use his feet and run on the ground, because they're going to try to hit him and make the ball cough up.
Sure. But Trevor Lawrence is also very good on the ground too. I think that is going to be a very underrated aspect of tonight's game. They got him and Travis Etienne. Trevor Lawrence has never been afraid to use his legs. We've seen it in college, too. That run against Ohio State to really take over in that third quarter a couple years ago when he was on Clemson was awesome, too. But, he's going to use his legs, sure. I think this is going to be a game in which a crucial defensive play, like you said before, is going to change this game. I think it's probably going to be something of like a big interception, a tipped interception. The field's going to be slippery. You're going to miss a guy on his route. I think this is going to be a very tricky game in terms of finding that momentum. I think it's going to be slow to start. I think they're going to be trying to figure each other out a little bit. They're both playing for their lives. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting Thursday night game. And one of the better ones of this week, too. Those Christmas games stink. And there's a couple good ones on Saturday, but without Jalen Hurts playing, that Eagle-Cowboy game stinks as well. So I think this is one of the better games of the week, and I'm very excited to see what we got out of the Jets and the Jags.
Now, doing some scouting of the Jaguars throughout the season, the one guy that I'm most worried about hurting us tonight is Zay Jones. The Jaguars are undefeated when he scores a touchdown, which has been only in 3 games, to be fair. And the one game where he didn't score a touchdown was the huge comeback against Baltimore, where he had 11 catches for 145 yards. So I think the Jets are going to have to find a way to not let him beat them deep.
Well, he's an outside receiver. Sauce. That's going to be his guy. Christian Kirk is another dangerous guy for the Jags, too. He plays slot. He's going to be meandering around the field trying to figure out little holes here and there. That's going to be Christian Kirk's problem. And, Travis Etienne is another change of pace guy, another guy who struggles with fumbles. I think the turnovers tonight are going to be crucial in this game. I think that weather is going to play a huge factor. I think fumbles, interceptions, both sides. I don't think Zach Wilson is safe either. I think this is going to be a very ugly game that's going to be changed by a change of pace is going to be one or two defensive plays.
So in the past 6 weeks, 6 games, Trevor Lawrence has thrown 14 touchdowns, 1 interception, 70% completion rate.
Oh, he's been great.
By far his best 6-game stretch of his career. What have you seen from him in the past 6 games that you'll think he'll either be able to or not be able to continue going into tonight's game?
Confidence. Biggest thing with a quarterback is confidence. You're confident in what you're doing, you're confident in who you're throwing to, and you're confident behind the offense that's surrounding you, then the sky's the limit with a lot of these guys. And that goes to show why I was so crucial in that with Zach Wilson. Like, half of this is confidence. If they're comfortable in what they're doing, they know these playbooks front and back. They know what they're supposed to do. It's their confidence in their ability to do it. So it's, for him at least, he's settled in. He is confident in everything he's doing. He's playing the best football of his life so far. And he's kind of transcending himself in. People wanted to write him off after those first few losses a couple weeks ago. He was terrible in that Bronco game earlier in the year. He had a bad game against the Eagles. People wanted to write him off. The guy was drafted last year. Same thing with Zach Wilson. The guy was drafted last year. How are you going to gun this kid when he's 23 years old and he hasn't fit his shoes yet? They're not even broken in. They barely tied one shoe. I can't necessarily jump on the fact that people are gunning these quarterbacks. It was the same thing. We had this conversation about Daniel Jones 2 years ago. People wanted to throw this guy to the side of the road because he had a fumble issue. Now Daniel Jones has eradicated most of those for turnover issues. You got to give these guys time. And I know the Jets are in a win now mode, and they have 7 wins, and they're in the play for that wild card spot. You're in a position that you have to win now. I get that. But as to judge this kid's whole career and what he's supposed to do and the way he communicates with media or his teammates and everything, yeah, a little weird. He's got a lot to learn. But to bottle this up and kind of throw him to the side of the road, I didn't think that's fair. And I think with Trevor Lawrence, it's all that. We've stuck with him. He stuck with him. Doug Peterson done a great job with him. He stuck with him. I think that's been big in developing a confidence behind a young play caller and a young quarterback.
You're listening to Carton, Russo on the Fan, only 101.9 FM. Please make sure to call the lines 877-337-6666.